This is the ultimate beginner's guide to Botania. Hello, I'm Javier, and my goal on this channel is to teach you how to play every single mod in Minecraft with no waffle. So let's get into it. Botania is known as a magic and also a tech mod. I personally like to think of it as a kind of magically infused tech mod. So how do we get started in it? Well, you're going to want to get the Lexica Botania. This is basically your guidebook for the mod. You just need a book and then some kind of sapling along with it in a crafting table, and you make the Lexica Botania. If you are in creative, you can also get this writer's edition one here, just straight out of JEI, etc. And this one is basically the fully completed Lexica Botania. Of course, it is from creative. Once you've then got your Lexica Botania, what we then need to start doing is collecting some flowers. So out and about in the world, you'll find all these different flowers here, like the magenta, the orange, the mystical one. You can tell they're Botania flowers because it's quite obvious. They're just going to be everywhere. Like out in the world, here's some blue ones, there's some brown ones over here. Like I haven't placed these, this is just natural world gen, so they're quite easy to find. If you then put these flowers into a crafting grid, any colour, you will get the corresponding petal. One flower equals 2 petals here. You can then put the petals again into the crafting grid and get a dye. So you can see here, you then put the petal to get the dye. So that's a great way of getting vanilla dyes from Botania. What you can then do is take 4 dye, and of course that is actually vanilla dye that it makes, so maybe you already have loads of lapis and you can make loads of blue dye. Put that with bone meal and you'll get floral fertilizer. What floral fertilizer does, if I use it on the ground here, is you'll see it actually just makes loads of flowers. So like I said, if you're already quite far into your game and have loads of dye available from other means, you could just put it with some bone meal and easily get loads and loads of Botania flowers like this. That's a really easy way to get started. Sometimes in the world, you will also see double height flowers. And the way you can actually get these, again, sometimes you will find them naturally, but you can pluck them for basically double the amount of flowers. You can actually bone meal normal flowers and they will grow to double height, as you can see here. What we can also do is actually get a petal. So remember, when you get, let's say red, when you get a red flower, we can turn it into 2 petals. If I get 2 petals, what I can then do is plant the petals in the ground. You see here, I've planted 2 petals, and you can tell because it has these little sparkles. I can then bone meal those petals that I've planted, and that will get me a tall red flower. A tall red flower, then getting me 4 petals, which I can then plant again to then get 4, a bone meal, and then get 4 tall flowers. So that's a really good way, using bone meal, to actually have a never-ending supply of the coloured flowers that you want. So now that we have looked at all of our flowers, etc., the next thing we're going to look at making is a Petal Apothecary. You can often make different ones. As you can see here, there's the basic one. I'm just going to use some cobblestone in this format here with either a flower or a petal. You can also make a fuchsite one, myceliite. It basically depends on what stone you use, but the basic one is just cobblestone. Place that in the world, as you can see here, and then get a bucket of water. We'll need to continually fill these. So after you use them a few times, they will actually run out of water, is what I'm saying. So I actually have a bit of a cold when I'm filming this, so my brain is a bit fuzzy. So there we go. That is our Petal Apothecary. One of the main ways that we are actually going to be crafting in Botania is using the Petal Apothecary. What we do is we throw in different objects and then we use seeds as a catalyst to create a flower. And the first flower we're going to make is a pure daisy here. So let's see how we make the pure daisy. Well, it's going to need 4 white petals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my mystical white flower down and then I'm going to bone meal it and I'm going to break it, obviously not in creative. In my crafting table, I'm going to put my mystical white flowers and get 2 petals each, meaning I'm going to get 4 mystical white petals. I can then come up to my Petal Apothecary and throw them in. And if I literally just press Q, to drop the item, can you see that the petal is now floating around? Like I go 1, 2, 3, 4. you can now see on screen, it's telling me there's a tick, meaning you've got a correct recipe for something, and that we need to add a seed, any type of seed, and we will get the resulting flower. So if I get 1 seed, and I basically throw that in as well, and it will kind of explode. The water has disappeared, so I will need to refill it, and now I have a pure daisy. You can also see when I hover over this in my inventory, it says press Control, and it will take me to the actual relevant page in the Lexica Botania. So I can press Control, and it will take me to the Pure Daisy page in the Lexica Botania. But don't worry about that, because you have me today. You plant your Pure Daisy, like here. So you just plant it, like that. Now, what the Pure Daisy does is actually transform both logs and also stone. So I get some stone and logs. What I'm going to do is place it around the Pure Daisy. And can you see here that it has all this sparkles around it? So it basically is in a 8 around the Pure Daisy. And what you do is you wait about, 30 seconds to a minute, somewhere around there, and it's actually going to transform the logs into living wood and the stone into living stone. What you could do is a clever contraption of like dispensers and block breakers using redstone, etc., so that when it actually keeps transforming it, it will break it, and then you could hoover it up with some sort of vacuum hopper or something like that to continue farming these. You can just do it manually like this. This is generally how I do it. I do it manually, and it will pretty much take me to the end of the mod without really needing to automate it. So you don't need that much of it. You could also, of course, actually set up multiple Pure Daisies. And here we go. Look, you can see it is now being turned into living wood. And any second now, it should turn into, there we go, living rock. I can then use my pickaxe and just mine these just like you would with any other piece of rock. Or, of course, using an axe, preferably, on the living wood logs here. And that is the use case for the Pure Daisy. What we can then do with our living rock is make a mana pool. This is the main resource of Botania that we're going to be generating and using to control everything in the mod. There's actually a few different mana pools that we can make. One I want to mention is the Everlasting Guilty Pool, which is infinite and is creative only. You can make a diluted one by making living rock slabs, and then there's the normal mana pool as well. There is also the fabulous mana pool, which can be used with shimmer rock or bifrost blocks enhancing a normal mana pool, but these are materials we'll get a lot later in the game. The main one is the mana pool, just made of living rock like this. So you can place one down, as you can see here, and this is where we're going to be storing our mana. So we're going to be looking shortly at how to generate mana, but first I want to show you how we actually transfer it and how we can kind of direct things around. So a Wand of the Forest is one of the main tools you'll be using 3 living wood twigs. Living wood twigs are just used with living wood logs that you've just made of your Pure Daisy. And then all you do is you add 2 petals either side of it like this. And the colour of the petals is completely up to you. And you can see here there's white and white. That would be made using 2 white petals. Now when I hover over it, you can see it's in bind mode. If I shift right click, it will put it into function mode. Function mode, you can right click things to change the function. And bind mode will bind items. So if I shift and then scroll down, shift right click, it'll go to bind mode. What you can see here is a mana spreader. If I then shift right click this mana spreader, can you see that there's a little line around it? It might be quite hard to see, but I can shift right click to basically select the mana spreader, and then I can shift right click the mana pool. And what you can see is that there's a beam of light going from the mana spreader to the mana pool. That means this mana spreader will be spreading mana to this mana pool. If I come off my Wand of the Forest, the beam disappears. So only when I'm holding the Wand of the Forest can I see kind of what has been bound to each other. There is also a pulse mana spreader, which basically just works with redstone, and as you can see, it's pulsing out mana here. And again, I can shift right click that, and then shift right click the mana pool, and now it'll pulse mana to the mana pool. Mana spreaders are basically made, you guessed it, with living wood, a petal, and a copper ingot, and then the pulse one, you just add a bit of redstone to it. So you're probably now wondering, that's great and all, but how the hell do we actually make any mana in this game? So, in my Lexica Botania, and I am using the creative one because I have everything unlocked, so do be aware, you may not be able to see all of these flowers. That doesn't mean you can't use them, they just might not all be unlocked in your book. So the two entry-level ones that I first want to make you aware of are the Endoflame and the Hydroangers. The Endoflame is a flower that will generate mana by burning items nearby, like a furnace almost. How do we make the Endoflame? Well, it's just like we made our Pure Daisy, but instead of putting in 4 white petals and a seed as a catalyst, we're going to need 2 brown petals, and by the way, there are mushrooms that you could get as well, they just grow underground. So 2 brown petals, 1 light grey petal, and 1 red petal. The colour of the petals does obviously matter. Into your petal Apothecary, put in 2 brown petals, 1 red petal, 1 light grey petal, and then throw in a seed as a catalyst, and you will get an Endoflame. What some people do is they use a dropper and some redstone to make it automated, and they just fill like a barrel with coal, and that would be an open crate. Sometimes complex devices like droppers or dispensers can't offer enough precision. Make a crate, then punch a hole in the bottom. The open crate accepts each item from a hopper and then drops the item directly below it. So basically, what you could do is, see, you've got my Endoflame here. Let's put 1 here. I'm going to put 4 Endoflames. And I'm going to put a log here. I'm going to get my open crate from Botania. And again, this is just really easily made of living wood planks. I'm going to put that here. And then I'm going to put a hopper. This isn't automated, but it's like semi-automated. Up here. And then what I'm going to do is put a load of coal in here. And remember, because we've got a few slots in the hopper, I could literally put like this much coal in here just to get started. And of course you could put a hopper above the hopper and a hopper above the hopper, etc, etc. Or you could use an applied logistics system to output into this. There's so much you could do to make this really simple. But as you can see here, the open crate is going to drop continually all of the coal out of the crate. The reason that people then use redstone, so I could put a pressure plate here, and then have like some redstone coming out the side here, to then make it kind of add a redstone control until the pressure plate is empty, meaning that it would then turn off until all the coal is gone, because this is going to keep dropping it forever. So do think about that with redstone, etc. But that's one way you could do it. But what is happening here is these Endoflames are basically absorbing all of the coal, and you can use multiple here. They're absorbing the coal and turning it into mana. Mana will then be absorbed automatically by a nearby mana spreader. So can you see this big beam of mana being pumped into our mana pool? Well, what's happening here is the coal is automatically getting turned into mana, and you could use your Wand of the Forest to hover over it and see how much mana is in the Endoflames. They're empty because it's automatically going into the mana spreader. And you can see here the mana is going up in the mana spreader, but then it is being pushed out into the mana pool because I have binded the mana spreader to the mana pool. So it's saying any mana collected with the mana spreader is going to go into the mana pool. As you can see, it's taking a very long time for the mana pool to fill up. They can actually contain a hell of a lot of mana. The next one I wanted to show you was the Hydroanger. I'm going to get one of these now. That would be 2 blue petals, 2 cyan petals, and then again a seed in your Petal Apothecary. And what this basically does is it will actually gather water and turn it into mana nearby. So as you can see here, I've got a 3x3 water nearby. This Hydrangea is filling up with mana. You can see there's a tick there saying, yep, it is actually connected to a mana spreader. It's automatically going to the pulse mana spreader, which you can see, because it's a pulse one, it is quite slow, and it's slowly filling up with more and more mana. These actually don't last forever, or they never used to at least, so you may need to replenish these Hydrangeas sometimes. But you can see here the pulse mana spreader is slowly but surely pushing mana into our mana pool as well. There we go. We are making some mana. Let's have a look at some of the more advanced generating flora. I'm not going to go into as much detail with them, but there's a lot you could do here. Be really creative. There's the Dandelion. And you may also note on some of these generating flora that they need runes and some more advanced materials. We're going to be going through those later. But these are the flowers you can get. Anyway. The Dandelion is basically like a huge game. It's Conway's Game of Life. It's a 25 times 25 square, and you center it around the dandelion. It's the most advanced one. I'm not going to show it in here. There's the Entropinium. This needs you to ignite TNT near it, and that will make mana from the nearby explosions. There's the Gormalis. That'll eat any food items nearby and turn it into mana. There's the Kekimurus. That one actually eats cake. This flower is a lie, so that one will actually eat any nearby cake and turn it into mana. The Munchdew. That will actually eat up any nearby leaves and turn them into mana. There's the Narslimus. That basically uses slime. The Rafflesia. It eats man-made flowers in the Petal Apothecary. So very expensive there, but that will obviously make more mana than a basic generating one like the Endoflames over here. There's the Rosa Arcana. This is one of my favourite ones. This is actually going to absorb experience of nearby players and turn it into mana. It can also synthesize mana from experience orbs. So if you have a way in-game of dropping experience or a nearby mob farm, this is a great way of getting a lot of mana without really too much difficulty. And that's one of my favourite ways of making mana in the late game, is using the Rosa Arcana, using experience orbs and mob farms. There's the Shulk-Me-Not that will generate mana from the powers of the Shulker's Levitation. The Spectrolus, it likes wool, and it likes different colours of wool. The Firmalily, that is going to be lava near it. And that is all of the different ways that you could generate mana using flowers. A few other ways of transferring mana around are going to be the Mana Splitter. As you can see here, basically, imagine you have a... let's get my Wand of the Forest. Let's say I put my Mana Spreader into here. This mana pool is in the way. It's going to then shoot mana into this end. And of course, it's going to split it out any other ends that have a proper output. It can't go anywhere, so the mana is just going to be building in the Mana Spreader. But if there was outputs on this side or this side, the Mana Splitter would split it all out inside. Another way of getting mana and moving it around is going to be a tablet, a mana tablet. With Living Rock around the outside, and then a mana diamond or a mana pearl, you can make basically a little portable mana tablet. And you can put this in your inventory, etc., to use for items that may need mana in your inventory. So how do we get a mana diamond and a mana pearl? Because as well, the splitter also needs Manasteel ingots. So I'm actually going to use a creative mana pool here, because when you've got enough mana in here, we can actually put certain items in and catalyze them. So an iron ingot, for example, I could throw it into my mana pool, and you can see it's got a tick, meaning you have enough mana in here. If I hover it over here, you can see this one also has enough mana in. And I just throw it in, my iron ingot, and out comes a Manasteel ingot. If you have JEI or just enough items or a similar mod installed, you could actually hover over your mana pool and press U on your keyboard and click Mana Infusion. and that will show you all the different things you can infuse with mana. The basic ones that you're doing to start with are going to be a diamond into a mana diamond, and this shows you here how much mana it will take out of your pool. Another one will be an ender pearl into a mana pearl, glass into mana glass, nether quartz into mana quartz, sugar into mana powder. In fact, there's a few things you can make into mana powder. String into mana infused string, and an iron ingot into a Manasteel ingot. You can use iron blocks as well. Using one of those mana pearls, which again is by throwing in an ender pearl, you could put some gold and some brewing stands, etc., to make an alchemy catalyst. What we could do with the alchemy catalyst is put it underneath our mana pool, like this, and now we can actually use the catalyst for things. So the alchemy catalyst means that we could change more things into other things using the mana pool, using mana infusion. So if you see on JEI here, it has this alchemy catalyst logo. That means that you could use a blaze rod in there to turn it into nether wart. You could turn stone bricks into chiseled stone bricks. I could turn cobblestone into sand, and these kind of things. You could turn gunpowder into flint. But you must have the alchemy catalyst below your mana pool in order for these ones with this alchemy catalyst logo to work. This is really useful for things like turning rotten flesh into leather, for instance, using hardly any mana. One other thing you could do which is really useful is a band of mana here. So you could use your mana tablet with 4 Manasteel ingots, which remember is by throwing iron into the mana pool, and you can get a band of mana which you could put in your ring slot, and again that can be used to actually have mana on your person. If you're not sure how to actually charge up these things, tossing a tablet into a mana pool will allow for flow of mana between them. Sneak right-clicking, or using a dispenser, on the mana pool with a wand of the forest will change which way the mana flows. And unlike normal dropped items, the mana tablets, etc., will never go. Can you see here, when I hover over it, the wand of the forest, it says there's an arrow, so it's showing that the tablet is going to put mana into the pool. If I shift right click, it's going to say the pool is going to put mana into the tablet. And now you can see some little lightning effects going on, and it's actually filling up the mana tablet with mana. So you can do these both ways. The same goes with the ring I just showed you, which is called the Band of Mana. Or Mana Band. Band of Mana. I can then walk over my mana tablet, and you can see it's now full of mana. And that's another way of transporting mana around. With all this cool new stuff, like Manasteel, we can actually make some tools. They pretty much have the same mining level as iron, however they have better durability, and you can of course recharge them rather than repair them with mana, like things using the mana tablet in your inventory. There is also some benefits to them on top of that. The pickaxe will place a torch from your inventory, and the axe will do the same thing with saplings. Note that the shears made of mana-based materials will trigger tripwires, unlike iron ones. And you can use 2 living wood twigs and then some Manasteel ingots. That's just made from living wood logs, remember. There's a pickaxe, shovel, an axe, a hoe, some shears, and also a sword. It's 1.6 attack speed with 3 reach and 6 damage, so they're not bad. There's also armor as well. There is the helmet, the chest plate, legs and boots, of course. And if you have the add-on mod, AIOT Botania, which a lot of mod packs do, I'm filming this in ATM 9, and it is in here, there is another item. You can put together the sword, axe, pickaxe, hoe, and shovel to make this. Till soil and creates grass paths. It basically combines all of the features into one awesome tool. It's literally called All-in-One Tool Botania. If you're really early game, you can use living rock to make living rock versions, which are basically stone pickaxe rather than iron. And again, you can recharge these with mana. And the same with living wood, which is going to be wood rather than, stone. There is one more set you can make, which is mana weave equipment. And basically, they don't offer as good protection as Manasteel. So Mana Weave Cloth here is made from making mana infused string, which is putting string into the mana pool to get that. What this does is if you're wearing the full set, so the head, the chest, the legs, and the boots, you will actually get a discount. I'm not actually sure what percentage it is. It doesn't tell me, but you basically get a discount when using mana. When all 4 pieces of the set are worn, tools and rods are far, far cheaper to use in mana cost. Wearing the full set also grants the wearer an increased proficiency of magical rods, increasing their powers and or ranges. There's a lot of tools we're going to be looking at later on in the complete guide of Botania as well, which this can help with. That pretty much covers the basics, but there is one more thing before we kind of look at more advanced things. And that is going to be the Runic altar. This is the next way that you can craft things. So to make the Runic altar, it is actually really simple. It's just some living rock and a mana pearl. But remember how in the Petal Apothecary, we could put in different petals and then a seed catalyst to make flowers? Well, the Runic altar is kind of similar, but more advanced. And what we can make in the Runic altar is runes. There's a lot of runes you can make. The starter ones are going to be elemental runes: water, fire, earth, and air. Now, if I look at water, which is the one I'm going to be showing you in this video, you can see that it needs a runic altar, some mana, and then a sugarcane, bone meal, manasteel ingot, mana powder, and a fishing rod. And then the one in the middle here, the living rock, is the catalyst. What will that make? 2 runes of water. You could look at fire and see the items needed for that. Same with earth and air. And these are the 4 basic ones. So let's make a rune or 2 runes of water. So I can right click the mana powder, the manasteel ingot, the fishing rod, the bone meal, and the sugarcane. You'll then hear an explosive noise. So these items are all floating around. It now needs mana. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to get a mana spreader. I'm going to place it here, and I'm going to shift right click my guilty pool mana spreader. Sorry, not the mana spreader. I'm going to put the mana spreader to the runic altar. And then what I'm also going to do is actually put a mana spreader above my guilty pool. And what this is going to do is you can see it's already full of mana because I've put it above the pool. It's automatically going to take mana from the pool. So this is actually how you get mana from the pools to other things. So I'm going to go mana spreader to this mana spreader and this mana spreader to here. I could just do it directly, of course. There we go. So that is now pumping mana from the guilty pool into this mana spreader, which is then going to this one. So I'm just showing you could do it as a loop. I can just do it straight to the runic altar, of course. And now it's pumping mana into the runic altar. And can you see on the very right hand side it's got an X, and then it's got almost like a clock going round in the rune? That is basically telling you how much mana it still needs to complete the process. So once that little clock face has actually gone all the way around, which it will do very shortly, there we go. You can now see it says a tick, and it needs a living rock, Wand of the Forest. You can see the lightning coming up. So if I right click the living rock, that then goes into the middle there. And I get my Wand of the Forest, and I right click, and boom! I now have 2 runes. It says right click with an empty hand to add back the last recipe. If I get an empty hand and just right click, it's actually going to put all those same items on again, as long as you have them, of course. And that's a really easy way of making more of the runes you need. You could then see there's some more advanced runes like spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And to make those, you'll see that it also needs runes. So to make the rune of spring, I need wheat, 3 saplings, and a rune of fire and water. And you may be thinking, gosh, that is quite an exonerous task. Well, or onerous task even, sorry. When you use runes in recipes for runes, it won't use them up. Meaning, if I use a rune of fire and water in this recipe, it won't actually use up the runes. It will only use up the saplings and the wheat. So that's just something to note there, that it is actually a bit easier to make these more advanced ones than it originally or first seems. So again, put the items on. Once it's got enough mana, right-click on your living rock, and then right-click with the Wand of the Forest. And then you've made your runes. And I now have 4 runes of water. And that is how you use the Runic altar. So what do we use with our runes? Well, we can use them for quite a few things. A terrestrial agglomeration plate, which is more advanced. That needs quite a few runes. You can make things like weight lenses, spark augments, and all sorts of things like this. Creative mana tablets in ATM, it's using the ATM star, for example, and loads of other things, accessories that you can make here. And that pretty much covers everything you need to know as a beginner in Botania. Just to recap what we've gone over, you want to start off by finding flowers and farming them. I have put everything in chapters in the description below, should you need to revisit any of the topics that you've seen here today. Once you've done that, you want to make your Petal Apothecary and make some pure daisies, which will allow you to make living rock and living wood. Then start making some mana pools and start generating some mana. I would recommend as a beginner that you use Endo Flames and or Hydrangeas to do this. These would be the simplest. You can transport around mana with mana spreaders and pulse mana spreaders, using your Wand of the Forest to bind these to different mana pools and generating and functional flora. One thing that we haven't gone over in the beginner guide is functional flora. You can actually look through your Lexica Botania to see all of these. Rather than generating mana, these ones will actually use mana to do things. And I'll be going over this in my ultimate Botania guide on my channel. We can also use alchemy catalysts, mana tablets, and bands of mana to transport and utilize our mana more effectively. And there's also the Runic altar for a little bit more advanced crafting in Botania. If you are looking to watch the ultimate guide for Botania, we will also then be going over terrestrial agglomeration plates, Gaia arenas, and really, really advanced stuff. That is where the mod really gets fun. And if you're looking for more tutorials, then please do check out my channel, Javi Herobrine. If you go onto my homepage, what you're going to see is different shelves for all of the mods that I cover. There's tech mods here, magic mods, and I do a lot of other mods as well that are just on their own here. And my goal on this channel is to actually do a guide for every single mod in Minecraft. Will I ever accomplish it? Who is to say? If you are looking for mods, though, and I haven't done a video on it, please do comment down below, as generally, I actually do mods based on what the community wants. For example, Ori Tech here is an amazing mod I've done some guides on, and I actually had no clue it even existed, but a commenter commented below. And due to a comment I've just seen today, I'll be doing some more videos on that mod as well. So don't forget to subscribe and check out my ultimate guide to Botania, and do comment down below any other questions you may have.